Hello and welcome back to Deadline Day on Football Daily. We hope you enjoyed the stream from earlier in the day. Go back and watch that and get excited for our afternoon stream as well. But here we are talking about the news story of the day. It's Jorginho to Arsenal. The latest news as we film this at 9:51 is that David Ornstein has tweeted saying that they're advancing towards a full agreement to sign Jorginho. Arsenal have all but accepted that bid for Caicedo of Brighton is not going to happen this window. Fabrizio Romano, Pat, claims that Chelsea are only willing to sell for a significant fee. What, in your mind, would be an acceptable fee to pay for Jorginho, given his contract expires this summer?
Well, I probably myself would not go above 10, but I think, again, it kind of depends. You know, if you don't have a better option available on the market now, we know that Arsenal need a defensive midfielder, or maybe not a defensive midfielder, but Arsenal need a 6. From that point of view, I think it's okay to overpay to try and win the title. So I guess you look at his wages, you look at the length of the contract, and you say, are we willing to spend 20 million to try and win this title? Or are we willing to spend 25? So to a certain degree, I'd look at the thing as a whole deal. I don't really like the idea of more than 10, but at the same time, if it secures the title, it really doesn't matter. It's completely fine. The bigger issue from my point of view is the length of the contract.
Sure, yeah. It feels like a move for the short term, particularly. But Henry, I know that you're more pro this move than a lot of Arsenal fans, at least those ones on social media, have been over the last 12 hours.
Well, to slightly echo what Pat's just said, it doesn't. If they win the title and Jorginho is an effective bench option and can fill in and provide experience when necessary, then no one's going to remember how much they paid for him in the 15 to 20 million pound mark, which is kind of a drop in the ocean for a lot of these big clubs at this moment in time. I do think he's a very experienced, he's got lots of history of winning titles, the Coppa Italia with Napoli, obviously was a big part of the Italy side that won the Euros, has won the Champions League with Chelsea too, so he's got over the line in big tournaments and big pressure moments. Why wouldn't you want that in your ranks going into sort of new territory for a lot of these Arsenal players and in recent times? So I think he's excellent. He's hard-working defensively. Actually, looking at his stats, they're almost identical to Moises Caicedo of Brighton, who's obviously the man that they're also linked with this January. Although it doesn't look like he's going to get that move that he wants away to the Emirates. He's a comfortable player. You can trust him on the ball. He's a good passer. Yes, I appreciate that he's probably had his best days come and gone, but I still don't think he's that old at 31 years old. And for 18 months, a short-term deal before I imagine he goes back to Italy, I think this is a great move for Arsenal. And I'm amazed at the amount of vitriol that it's getting. I appreciate that Chelsea has sort of dobbed off a lot of their waste players on Arsenal over the years, and it hasn't always worked out. I don't think Jorginho is that bad, and I think in a new system, away from the kind of the chaos that we're seeing at Chelsea at the moment, I think he could be a really, really good, comfortable player. And it's not as if he has to start every single game. You're talking about somebody who's going to come in and be basically available off the bat to offer something off the bench for Arsenal. He's a great option.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think it's the issue with Arsenal fans is that they've been linked with Mudryk, they've been linked with Caicedo, and they've ended up with Trossard and Jorginho, who aren't as sexy a name, for want of a better word, but I think they'll be very effective bench options, which is what you need for between now and the end of the season. We've seen Arsenal's starting 11 has generally managed to stay really fit, to be honest, except for Gabriel Jesus' key injury and a couple of games missed by Zinchenko. But they do need to cover for eventual injuries, and the most devastating one they could get between now and the end of the season, in my opinion, is probably Thomas Partey. So Jorginho being able to cover for that eventuality, play the final 20-30 minutes of Premier League games, start in the Europa League, which they're probably going to write off if they're still, the title favourites as that tournament kicks off in mid-February. So I think this is quite a sensible move. Pat, in terms of a tactical issue, lots of Chelsea fans complain about Jorginho's lack of pace. Does that worry you at Arsenal? Do you think Arsenal and Arteta's system will be able to, cover for that?
I think Arsenal's system generally is designed to have as little open space as possible. It's about this rest defence so that when teams try and break out of Arsenal's kind of final third occupation, all the zones are occupied and that nobody is really covering the whole pitch, because you don't even want Partey doing that, even though he is much more mobile. To me, the fact that you've got Saliba there and Gabriel is really going to help a player like Jorginho, who is more athletically limited. But frankly now, the success of this team is not just like Partey being way better this season than he was last season, right? The team has developed as a whole. So if you take Partey out, it shouldn't all fall apart. All those developmental leaps that have been taken should still exist. So for example, yes, Partey is one of the better progressive passers in the team, but he's between Zinchenko, who's top, and White, who's third. Well, if you take Partey out, you've still got Zinchenko's top and White, who's third, and Jorginho can match that passing. And I'd say Partey's passing is actually far more important to this team than his defending. This season, his defensive actions, he's at about 3.6 a game. That's actually fewer than Jorginho, who's at 4.4. His success in the tackle is about the same as Jorginho's, it's about 40%. He's obviously a big physical presence in midfield, so it's good to have him winning area balls, especially because our attack isn't very big. You've also got Xhaka, who can do a bit of that too. So I think that assuming that Jorginho comes in and his job is to suddenly defend the whole midfield is a little bit ahistorical when you look at how Arsenal have played up until this point this season. So Arsenal just want a guy who looks exactly like Thomas Partey, who plays exactly like Thomas Partey. Arteta doesn't want that. Arteta wants somebody who fulfills certain tactical requirements. And what he's always going to prioritise over everything else is passing. Defending, from Arteta's point of view, is a team activity. So whether Jorginho has issues in that department remains to be seen. But it's about whether the rest of the team can compensate for a change in the lineup, rather than can Jorginho exactly replicate what Partey does.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I feel like as long as he can stay fit between now and the end of the season, because Jorginho has become increasingly injury prone over the last couple of years, and Arsenal were linked with him in 2020, which I think is an important point. Arteta has wanted this player in the past. He was, working under Guardiola when they looked to sign him in 2018 when he initially joined Chelsea, and they eventually got Rodri, which turned out very well for them. So this is a player that he's wanted for a long, long time. He clearly likes what he can bring to the table and probably knows his limitations. Like, nothing about Jorginho is really a mystery anymore.
No.
And as long as he can stay fit and contribute towards the back end of the season, I'm totally for this move, as long as the fee and the length of contract is reasonable. Henry, let's talk about Man City, because it's impossible to talk about Arsenal at the moment without talking about the title race. Man City, Joao Cancelo is left on loan to Bayern Munich. Hasn't fully been, well, we haven't seen him in a Bayern Munich shirt, but that's got the here we go from Fabrizio Romano. The talk about Bernardo Silva leaving on loan as well. Surely these moves, with Arsenal strengthening their squad and Man City losing two key players, gives even more of an advantage to Arsenal.
Yes and no. I think Pat made a really good point on the live stream, which I recommend you guys check out, that if Guardiola feels that these players don't want to be there, then it's better for the title race just to get them out the door and rely on the squad cohesiveness to push through. I mean, these are world-class players, and if they're going to be kicking up a fuss on the sidelines, then they're going to have an impact on some of the other players in the squad. So I think Guardiola is the most important factor in this side there. Bernardo, don't get me wrong, amazing player. I love watching him. I don't think he's irreplaceable in that Man City side. I still think that
even on deadline day.
I still think Grealish could play an even greater role and be given more responsibility, because you get the feeling that's what he's been looking for since he's been going there. Obviously, De Bruyne plays and is the creator that I think he would ideally like to be, but a lot of Grealish's numbers have been amazing, working just off him and providing those kind of runs and finite passing to help get De Bruyne into space. So I think that Grealish could almost see his role heightened, and I still think that Phil Foden could maybe drop a bit deeper and play in midfield too if necessary. But yeah, it is a huge risk. He's the one thing you've got to say about Bernardo Silva, he's a loyal player. You pretty much know what you're going to get every single game from him. You hardly see his level drop, certainly in recent seasons. Still one of the most used players in the squad this term. That's the slightly baffling part to it. But there's been rumours and rumblings that he's wanted to move before. Maybe that's just coming to the boil now. I still think I'm not quite sure who's got the ability to take him off, because he must go to a team where he's going to play every single minute, because he's that kind of player at the moment. But yeah, Cancelo too, fair enough. If he didn't want to be there, if he was causing friction, get him out the door. They've still got Kyle Walker, who continues to get better and better every season, and I really like Rico Lewis as an alternative off the bench there, so it's an opportunity for him to get more minutes. I don't think it's a massive disaster if City don't win the league this season. I really don't think it's... If Arsenal take it, then fair enough. It feels like City are going for a slight transition at the moment. Maybe Guardiola recognises that. I certainly think that the City board aren't stupid enough to think that they're always going to be competitive. Well, I mean, as in, there are going to be minor blips here now and then, and maybe this is just a process they're going through at the moment. I think this is fine for Man City. It's not like a complete disaster, and they've still got unbelievable amount of depth and ability to challenge Arsenal down the backstretch when Arsenal are in unfamiliar territory, and City certainly aren't.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's 2 games against Arsenal coming up, of course, as well. The gap's only 5 points as well. Arsenal have that game in hand. I did think, Man City had an excellent chance in the Champions League this year. We've seen them blitz a number of teams this year, scoring goals in quick succession. You do that in a Champions League knockout tie, you've got a very good chance of going through. And if they lose Joao Cancelo and Bernardo Silva this January, I really do think it's going to be very, very difficult for them to win their first Champions League title. But guys, what do you guys make of these 2 or 3 moves we've been talking about? Jorginho to Arsenal, are you pro it? Are you against it? Bernardo Silva potentially leaving Man City. Does that hand even more of the initiative to Arsenal? Let us know in the comments down below. Stay tuned for our next live stream, which will be just after lunch on Football Daily. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you later. Goodbye.